Hey guys, my name is Shai, and this video is about the Anunnaki, okay? The Anunnaki. And this might interest you if you know you are an Anunnaki starseed. This might also interest you if you are simply curious about this group and to know more. The first thing I want to emphasize here is that this particular group has a bit of a PR problem, right? They have a bit of a PR problem. You may be aware of a particular narrative that is perpetuated on the internet about this group. And I'm never somebody who wants to get involved in an argument about like what is true and what is false in this type of way, right? And this is part of the complexity of kind of some of the themes I think we're going to explore here, because there is this narrative, right? There's this narrative that is perpetuated about the Anunnaki, and I mean, it may or may not be true. But even that way of thinking, trying to figure out, is it true or not? Is that really what happened? Is that really who they are? And is that the whole story, right? What is the real truth about this narrative? That is a very sticky situation to get in, right? It's a very sticky situation to get in, particularly if you have a view that is similar to mine. I mean, a view about how this universe works, how reality works. So for those of you who don't know me, if you just clicked on this, kind of one of the most basic background assumptions that I carry when I'm looking out at the universe and I'm thinking about like reality and how reality works, I have the view that we are living in a infinite multiverse, to put it that way, right? An infinite multiverse. And that means that there are multiple timelines, perhaps infinite timelines. But let's just go with multiple timelines. There are multiple timelines. There are multiple versions of reality. There are different instances of reality. There are different versions of different things. There are different versions of me. There are different timelines that I'm moving through. There are different versions of my own past. There are different versions of my own past lives. So let me actually talk about this for a second, just because I want to be clear about where I'm coming from on this, okay? So when we're thinking about our past lives, right? When I'm thinking about my past lives, I'm always thinking, oh, is that what happened? Is that what happened in that past life? What is the thing that happened? What is the truth of that past life? I don't really think it's that simple, because I know that there are multiple different timelines of that past life. There are multiple different versions of that past life. So there are some versions of that past life where certain things happened, and there are different versions of that same life where different things happened. So that kind of leads us into the situation where the thing is true and not true, depending on what version of reality I'm tuning into, depending on what narrative I'm turning into, depending on what version of the story, what draft of the novel, right? What timeline I'm tuning into. Everything happened and didn't happen. It is true and not true. It is real and not real, just depending on the narrative that you were tuning into. And of course, most of us have a certain narrative that comes forward as the one that is most relevant, right? I have stories that I tell myself about my own past lives. I go, yeah, in that life, that's what happened, because that is the narrative that comes forward as being really resonant, being really relevant, and I kind of incorporate it into my view of my lives. I incorporate it into my narrative about my own lives, right? But I kind of hold that narrative gently. I go, yeah, that's the story that I'm carrying for now, because it resonates, it's useful to me. I have memories about it. It's the one that's coming forward. But I always have this more basic or broader worldview in the back of my mind going, well, that's only as relevant as I want it to be, right? I can always pick up my diary of my past and I can write a new version of my past. I can write down a different version of the story. Just think about movies with different endings. Which ending of the movie is the real ending? whichever one you want to be canon, right? Think about if you're writing a story. You can write one version of the story, you can write a slightly different version of the story, you can write a completely different version of that character's life where different things happened, right? And which version of the story is the one true version? Well, that doesn't really make any sense, right? In terms of stories, in terms of storytelling, in terms of books, right? You can think about how, in literature, we have the canon, right? We have the canon. You might say, oh, those versions of the stories, that version of the story, that's the canon, right? That's canon. But then you go, like, think of Harry Potter, right? You have the published version of Harry Potter. That is the Harry Potter canon. Then you go on the internet and you look up fan fiction. Well, all of those stories are real. There are stories that have been told. They are narratives that now exist. They're not canon, but they are real, So I'm really going on this because that's why. So coming back to this whole thing about the Anunnaki, and that there is this one very popular narrative that has been really kind of disseminated across the internet, and even in some documentaries that have made it on TV. I mean, is it true? Is it not true? I'm not coming to this video trying to argue with that. Okay. I don't want to get into that because that doesn't even make sense to me, right? That way of thinking doesn't really make sense to me, about trying to argue about what is the one truth about what happened with this, alien civilization in the past. There's different versions of the story. There's different timelines. There's different realities. Okay. So all I'm wanting to do with this video is to kind of free us up to see different aspects of the Anunnaki, to see different versions of ourselves, and to kind of free us up from that one particular narrative. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you don't know what that narrative is, that's great, because that means you're not being kind of bogged down by that one particular view of the Anunnaki. And this is important for Starseeds, because many of us have this Anunnaki heritage, these Anunnaki past lives, but we have sometimes struggled to tune into them, to remember them, to find the resonance from them, because we don't want to believe that we had past lives that were really, really bad, or that were part of this really bad group. And we want to just kind of explore what else there is to discover here. Okay, what else there is to discover about the Anunnaki, about our Anunnaki lives, and what might be relevant for us to know about the Anunnaki, like, group consciousness right now. Okay, right now. And you can already tell that there is a huge theme here about misconceptions about how people see you. Misconceptions about how people see you. And you can think about in your life how some of those themes might be playing out. That's part of what's relevant for this video, right? That's part of that's one of the themes that is coming forward here, about how people see you, about how sometimes people see you and they don't see what's really there. They don't really see what's true about you. They see some false narrative about you, or they see a distorted narrative, or they really only focus on that one mistake you made, or that one thing you might have done that maybe wasn't, maybe you weren't at your best that day, and people really focus on that, and that's all that they can see. Or, even if you have any work that has to do with the way people see you, like if you work in marketing or social media, if you have a business, if you do any kind of art or anything like that, if you work trying to get clients, this could have something to do with any struggles you might have around building up your business, or the way people see you online, the way people perceive you. There's something here about lenses, okay, about lenses. The lens that exists between yourself and how people perceive you. This can also, and really, really, okay, I would say also, or equally, it has to do with how you perceive yourself, your own self-perception, okay, your own self-perception, the lens that exists between you and your perception of yourself, like the way that you see your own self. And definitely something here about having picked up perceptions that others have put upon you. And remembering that everybody is standing in a different place. And when you stand in a different place, you literally have a different perspective. Like, different perspectives it's not just a difference in opinion. It is literally a difference in perspective, right? If you were standing in different places around this deck of cards, you'd be literally seeing it differently. So difference in perspective is not just a difference in opinion. It is a difference in what you can physically see. And so we also mean that metaphysically, right? Or metaphorically and metaphysically. You know what I mean? So let me just start getting some cards and find out what wants to come through here. So something that my guides are just showing me, something that's really being emphasized is the wings, okay? The wings of the Anunnaki. I'm seeing them here as, you know, vaguely human looking. Maybe 6 or 7 feet tall, you know, but 7 feet tall or taller even. And wings, okay? With your wings. The wings of the Anunnaki. That phrase has some resonance to it. You feel that? The wings of the Anunnaki. The wings of the Anunnaki. The Grande Dame would be the Empress. Oh, the House Mother. So this would be... And the House Mother, but that came out in reverse. Let me get one more card. 2 more cards. 7 of Chalices and the 5 of Lanterns. No, sorry. So here we would... I'm using the... what deck am I using here? Tarot for You and Me. Okay. And if you want to translate this to a traditional tarot, the Grande Dame here would be the Hierophant. You know. Number 5. And then we have the House Mother, which would be the Empress. Number 3. The Empress came out in reverse, though. And 7 of Cups with 5 of Wands. So how there's like a confusion about conflict. A confusion about conflict. Confusion about conflict. The 7 of Cups, right? The confusion. The 5 of Lanterns, the 5 of Wands, the conflict. A conflict that can have to be, you know, perhaps this is a conflict that is confusing, but I feel more that this is about some type of confusion about the nature of conflict itself. Confusion about the nature of conflict itself. And then we have these masculine and feminine energies here that are quite turned on their heads. There's definitely a theme here of breaking binaries. Okay, breaking binaries. The energy here is a little bit gender bending, but you don't necessarily need to relate to it in that way, right? What that is for you is very personal, but there's something here about breaking binaries, and I'm just seeing like all this stuff coming out of an egg. All this stuff coming out of an egg. There's a little bit of a feeling here of opening up a can of worms that perhaps you were afraid to open up. Something that you perhaps want to investigate, but maybe you're not quite ready to investigate it. There's a very interesting feeling here, okay? I almost feel that for some of you, there is something that you might begin thinking about right now. You might start to consider. You might be getting a little glimmer about. You might be getting a glimmer of something that you want to explore, or something that you want to look into, or something that you want to resolve or solve. But you're going to kind of put it on the shelf for now. You're going to put it on the back burner for now, and you might come back to it in a year or 2 years or 3 years. Something that you go, oh, that's interesting. There's something for me to look into. And that might actually be the resolution to a problem I've lived with, but almost the feeling of you're not quite ready to go down that path, to open that can of worms, or to pick that fight. And this feels quite neutral. And the thing here, it's actually your choice if you want to bother with that or not. It's your choice if you want to bother with that or not. And you will know. It's almost this feeling of, I have too much else on my plate right now. I'm going to put this on the back burner for now. So it's really interesting. It's a very strange message. As if, oh, I just got a little bit of clarity on something, but I'm going to put it on the back burner for a couple of years, perhaps. Maybe just 1 year, maybe 3 years. I don't know. So Interesting. They're showing me switching pots, putting some pots on the back burner and taking some pots onto the front burner, like switching your priorities around. Okay, switching your priorities around. What do you want to focus on right now? What do you want to focus on right now? What is most important for you to focus on right now? Which version of yourself do you want to focus on right now? Which version of your past do you want to focus on right now? Which version of your future do you want to focus on right now? That whole thing about different versions. Shark with purpose. Shark with purpose. And we have here, it's a little hard to see, but I always think that this looks like not a mermaid, but kind of like a mer shark or a shark maiden. She's half woman, half shark. Half woman, half shark. Half woman, half shark. But this point about purpose. Which version of your purpose do you want to focus on right now? And there's something about choosing your narrative about your own past will help you determine how you move into your future and how you build a purposeful life. When you understand that there are different versions of your past that you can tune into. And when we're talking about past lives, I feel like this is a lot easier to wrap our heads around, right? Because you can go, yeah, okay, there's different versions of my past life. There's all these different timelines and these even different versions of the galaxy, different versions of Earth. That's all like abstract and nebulous enough that I feel like this is easier to kind of allow. But when we start thinking about different versions of this particular life that you were still living and thinking, wow, what if there's different versions of my own childhood? What if there's different versions of that relationship that I had, right? That starts getting more difficult because, of course, the human mind naturally wants to focus on I have lived one life. I have lived one version of this life. There is one past. There is one truth about what happened. And I mean, all I can tell you is that the way I work with that conundrum there is I typically go, okay, I sort of anchor into one narrative of my life as the way I remember it, as the way I go, okay, that happened and then this happened and here I am today. And then I just kind of loosely understand that out there somewhere in some other reality, in some other version of my life, in some other timeline, in some other draft of my narrative of my life, I had a completely different life path, right? Or maybe there were just little things that are different, right? Holding that idea loosely. There is a need here to kind of, and this is part of the greater human project, the project of the human condition, to try and hold these different perspectives loosely, well, without becoming totally ungrounded, right? Because we don't want to allow all of this thinking about the infinite multiverse and different versions of self and all these multiple infinite timelines. You can really get lost in infinity, and that can cause you to become very ungrounded. It can cause you to be very out of your body, and that can make it difficult for you to thrive in your life. So we don't want this kind of spiritual, metaphysical, interdimensional, philosophical wonderings and speculation to negatively impact your grounded life. You need to be able to stay grounded in your life and to understand, to be able to clearly perceive the reality in front of you, right? It's so common for kind of more abstract like souls and starseeds to actually struggle to perceive reality clearly. This is how it can be a struggle sometimes to actually, if you know that you are a person, if you know that you have had multiple run-ins with people who were taking advantage of you, manipulating you, tricking you, this is kind of what I'm talking about, right? Or if you have a pattern of getting into a situation where you didn't understand what the situation was until it was too late, until later, right? Because you couldn't perceive that person's motivations clearly. You were kind of seeing what happens here. So what happens here is sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the truth of someone's soul and how they are living as a person, right? Living as a human being. Because when you're really tuned into the soul reality, you can look at someone and you can see that their soul is so beautiful, and you see who they are at the soul, and you see them as the beautiful being and soul that they are. But there can be this big disconnect, because a beautiful, fantastic, beautiful, this loving, bright, wonderful soul that you know on the level of the soul, that beautiful, amazing, loving soul can be living a human life where they might be dangerous to be around, or they might be unpleasant to be around. They might be manipulating people and tricking people and doing negative things, right? That is the role and the life narrative that some souls take on, right? So there's something here about some people, when you are so tuned into the soul truth, when you're so tuned into the spiritual truth of someone, it can be hard to see that they are someone that you maybe shouldn't be around. Or perhaps it's not even necessarily a person. It could be a job or a career or an entire field or an entire way of thinking or a place. You need to be able to distinguish the kind of spiritual reality where you're really tuned into the soul level, and that's when you see that everything is like beautiful and loving and safe and wonderful, and then the kind of earth reality where the things can be dangerous, and you could realize that you need, get yourself out of that situation, stay away from that person. Like, that's bad juju, that's bad energy, that's not going to be good for you to be around, right? There can be confusion there about that. So, but I feel like that lesson you have gone through learning. Like, if this is relevant for you, right, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've had your run-ins with the people that you didn't see clearly, but then eventually you learned what they were doing, and you learned how they really are in their human manifested body, right? You know how they are acting in their human life. Now you've learned the difference. You've learned, okay, even though at the soul, I know that this person is perhaps a soul family member or even a soulmate or someone beautiful and wonderful and safe to be around at the soul, but in this lifetime, they are walking, a path where they have taken on the role of having various negative tasks to play out in this lifetime, right? To know the difference. Okay, so I kind of got distracted on that, but that is part of some kind of very deep lesson that's been going on here. And it's important to be able to see both, okay? To see both. And to kind of hold the paradox, and go, someone can be a beautiful, loving, light-based, radiant soul on the one hand, and in their human life, they can do horrible, bad, negative things. Both of those truths can exist simultaneously at the same time, right? Both of those truths can exist simultaneously at the same time. And that's almost that's just like a different layer of this whole thing about, there are different versions of your past life. And there are even different versions of entire civilizations, or even different versions of Earth. There's really, you see where I'm getting at here? This is so much about holding the paradox, holding multiple timelines, holding multiple realities, knowing that nothing is ever just one thing, nothing is ever that clear cut. You're tuning into infinity here, tuning into multiple versions of everything. And that is quite mind-bending to the human mind, okay? The human mind is not really, the human mind wants everything to be one thing. That's not how really anything is beyond the constraints of the human mind. Okay. So it actually seems to me that, why is all I sit down to make a video about the Anunnaki and this is all coming out. But that's how these, that's how these things tend to roll, right? We tune into a kind of soul group, in this case, the Anunnaki, and then we have all of these kind of themes that are prominent for that soul group that comes up, and then we see how that works and plays out for individuals that might be resonating with that theme at the moment. And it's all just these different ways of working through these different themes and working through these different energies. And I find what a fascinating thing we've created for ourselves, right? We've created this galaxy where there are all of these different groups of souls that have lived in all kinds of different places and lived out all kinds of different stories, and then they've all mingled together in all of these different ways, and then we come to Earth, and then we mingle these energies together more, and then we relate to our own individual stories by seeing how they echo through all of these different soul groups. And it's just, I know it's like a lot to try and take in with the human mind, but it is endlessly fascinating to me how this all kind of flows together. Endlessly fascinating. So what they're saying is breaking the binary of good and evil. Breaking the binary of good and evil. Thriving. Okay, thriving. This word was coming out earlier, right? I was saying where sometimes getting lost in the spiritual thinking, and the interdimensional thinking and the multiverse thinking, right? Getting lost in all of that, it can interfere with your ability to thrive in the material world, right? Just like if you're this is like where being too loving and too compassionate and too understanding and too forgiving, that can create problems in your physical life, because then you don't necessarily set boundaries when you should, right? Because you can always see like the soul truth, right? And then you can end up getting entangled in situations that are not healthy for you, right? And that can create problems with your ability to thrive in the physical earth. Because in order to thrive in the physical earth, you actually need to know when it's not ever that you need to stop being unconditionally loving, and it's not that you need to stop being compassionate. It's that sometimes this very simple way people talk about, it's about boundaries, it's about boundaries, it's about boundaries. That is a really good way of talking about this, but it is also a rather kind of it's a foundational understanding, right? It is an absolutely foundational understanding. First, you know when to use boundaries, and then you learn when to draw your energy back, and then you learn how to focus your energy on like self-creation, right? How to focus your energy on self-creation. Okay, the way I want to talk about this is you are here to learn how to thrive in your human vessel. And sometimes that might mean doing things that you might feel, that you might be afraid are bad. And it's like, I want to be a little careful on how I say this, because I don't mean that you should, get up tomorrow morning and, pick up an axe and go becoming a rampaging axe murderer, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like go out and do bad things. But I know I can talk about this to the kind of people who are going to see this video, because you guys, like, I know you kind of get it, right? I mean it more in like, sometimes if we are overly fixated on giving, on pleasing others, on taking care of everybody else around us, on taking responsibility for others, on always over-giving, over-caring to the detriment of the self, sometimes, right, it's needing to set those boundaries. It's needing to pull your energy back. It's needing to say no to people. It's needing to disappoint people. Sometimes it might even be having to be very extremely firm and assertive in having a very difficult conversation with someone. Sometimes, tough love might be something you need to engage in, especially if that's been something that's been challenging for you in the past, right? Being able to assert yourself in a conversation and being able to, even if you have to be intense, even if you have to be extremely firm, sometimes that's what you need to do, right? And those things might sometimes feel like they're bad to you, right? They might feel like they're bad, but you have to think about the cost to yourself, Think about, are you willing to pay that cost to yourself? Are you willing to take on the burden of that, right? Are you willing to take on the burden of that? How will it interfere with your ability to thrive? What if you started prioritizing your ability to thrive in this lifetime? What if you started choosing, oh, I need to do that this way because otherwise I will not be able to thrive? Perhaps you run a small business and you're trying to decide how much to charge for your goods or your services. And you think, oh, I want to charge what is fair. I'm going to charge the bare minimum because I want everyone to feel like they can afford it. And I don't like money. I think money is, bad, and I don't want to be taking money from people. So I'm going to charge the bare minimum. That might work for a while. What will eventually happen for most people who take that strategy is eventually you'll want to quit, because you feel like you're just getting drained, and you start to feel bitter, and you start to feel resentful, and you realize, oh, I can't make enough money doing this. It's too exhausting. It's taking up too much time, and I still don't have enough money to thrive in my life. And so you just quit. But before you quit, think about a different way. Think about, oh, what if I charge the amount I need in order to keep doing this? Because that's how it eventually comes down to that type of decision. I will either charge this much money because that is the amount of money that will enable me to continue doing this, or I will have to quit, right? It becomes that simple. And when you reach that point in your business, in terms of how you are pricing your product or your service, you realize, oh, well, I'm going to have to charge that much, even though that sounds like way too much money, because if I don't charge that much money, then I won't do it. So it's either charge that much money or no, oh, don't do it. And that's the decision you can make, right? And of course, it's not that all of you run businesses and stuff like that, but also think about that in terms of your human life, your life with your family, your relationships, your friends. At some point, there is a balance to be struck where you go, oh, I have to set my boundaries this way, otherwise I cannot continue in this relationship. I need to live my life this way, or it's like life is going to be way too hard to live, right? And there's a complete rejiggering here of how you set your priorities, of what you're willing to put up with, and what you're willing to accept. Because at some point you realize, I simply cannot continue in this fashion. It is unsustainable. So I'm going to do it this way because this is the only way that I can actually do it. I'm going to live my life this way because this is the only way that I can actually thrive. And there's so many different ways, like how that's resonating for you. It can be very, very different, right? Yeah, for somebody, maybe it's a business. They're trying to decide how much to charge, right? For some people, maybe it's with interpersonal relationships and they're trying to decide how to set their boundaries. For other people, there could even be something about your identity here and how you express yourself and how you show up in the world, right? Is it worth hiding who you are? Is it worth hiding who you are? How much does that cost you? How much of a burden is that to carry? Can you continue to move forward in your life? Can you thrive that way? Can you thrive that way? Can you thrive while you are still hiding who you are? Or is that the cost of hiding who you are? How much is that costing you? How much is that preventing you from thriving? And even in terms of like your job, how much is your job costing you? How much is your job costing you? Can you continue to work at your job? Can you thrive while you're working at your job? Or is it ruining your life, right? Is it Yes, you're making money from it, but is it destroying you? What is the cost of your job? You can also think about, what if you have a bunch of clutter in your house, especially if your clutter is emotional clutter, right? And you can think about literally emotional clutter, like if you have a lot of emotional baggage, memories from the past, different things, different traumatic memories, that kind of stuff, emotional baggage. Or you can think about how stuff in your house, if you have lots of clutter in your house, how that can sometimes be related to emotional clutter, right? And you think, oh, I have to carry all this stuff around. Every time you move, you pack up all of your stuff. Maybe you're paying literally money every month to keep all of your stuff in storage, and every time you move and then paying for the storage, and it's just becoming so expensive. How much is that clutter costing you? How much is all that stuff costing you? Like, maybe literally, how much is it costing you, or how much is it costing you in terms of your energy? You might think, oh, I can't let go of these things. I can't let go of these memories. I can't let go of these thoughts. I can't let go of this bitterness. I can't let go of this resentment. I can't let go of this baggage. I can't let go of all of these old photographs, or all these old clothes, or all these old mementos. How much is it costing you to carry those burdens? These burdens that you hang on to, how much does it cost you to carry them into the future, right? How much does it cost you? And are you willing to do that? And are they preventing you from thriving? So this is like really like diverse in how this could be showing up, but definitely think about the costs, the cost of the choices that you make, and the burdens that you carry, and the way that you hide, and what you're willing to accept. How much is that costing you? And is it preventing you from thriving? Is it preventing you from thriving? So, trying to bring this back around to the Anunnaki here. This is, I think, something that the Anunnaki collective is working through. And coming back to that narrative, right? That narrative that is popularly perpetuated about the Anunnaki, about how they were essentially bad actors, right? The narrative about how they did bad things, just to keep it simple. That is quite a repressive narrative, because it stops, for example, it stops many starseeds from connecting with that aspect of themselves. Starseeds, this narrative is preventing starseeds from connecting with their powerful, beautiful, and more to the point, authentic Anunnaki nature. Okay, the authentic Anunnaki nature. And whether or not that narrative, if we want to look at that popular narrative, whether or not it's true or not, it's almost at this point, I think, besides the point. It's besides the point, because there is so much more to be discovered about the Anunnaki nature that is not being allowed to come forth because of that oppressive and repressive narrative. And if you can think about what narrative is told about you, this could be, what narrative do other people tell about you, or what narrative do you tell about yourself? And whether it's true or not almost doesn't even matter at this point. Almost doesn't even matter. That's why I don't like to get into arguing about like what is the one truth or not. It's almost besides the point, okay? What matters is, what do you want to do moving forward? What do you want to do? How do you want to be moving forward? What do you want to do moving forward? What narrative do you want to write for yourself moving forward? And yes, you have that right. I just heard somebody saying, do I have the right to write my own narrative? Some kind of question to that extent. Somebody's asking, like, do I have the right to disagree with the established narrative? Yeah, you do. You have the right to write your own narrative. You have the right to disagree with whatever you want to disagree with. You have that right. Everyone does. You have the right to stand up and say, that is not true for me. I don't agree with that. Community. Yin. And truth be told. You could interpret these cards in a number of ways. I'm just going to give you my interpretation. The way I'm feeling this is like waking up out of some communal narrative that has been passively accepted. There are so many different ways of interpreting what I just said, right? You got to fit this to what's coming up for you, right? But I really feel like it does have to do with this negative narrative of the Anunnaki, right? This negative narrative of the Anunnaki. And yeah, in some reality, I suppose that narrative is true, okay? Kind of besides the point. Because it is only, there's so much more to the story here, and there is so much more to the Anunnaki that we want to wake up and snap out of that one narrative of that one group in that one time, okay? There's so much more to be said here, and more to the point, there is this bigger kind of trend here, I feel, of this feels this yin with community. I mean, this is not necessarily negative energy, right? This could be very beautiful, warm, loving, like feminine community. But the way it feels here, it almost feels like a little bit suffocating. It feels like dark water. It feels like a dark pond, a dark water that is kind of clinging and oppressive, and it feels like it is trying to keep its members submerged, okay? Like it's trying to keep its members submerged. Wow, this is like giving me crazy prickles in the top of my head. Crazy prickles in the top of my head. And for somebody, it's going to be relevant for you to kind of open your heart and truth be told here. Truth be told. Is the popular narrative, is that true for you? Is that your truth? Is that true for you? Speak from your heart. Speak from your heart, right? And somebody is afraid of, the conflict and the fighting that might arise from this. And so let me just say that, we don't need to be afraid of conflict, because conflict doesn't need to be this big, horrible thing. And I would actually say it is when we are very afraid of conflict, that is when conflict becomes really bad, right? When we repress conflict, when we repress disagreement, when we repress personal truth, then the conflict kind of simmers and boils and boils and boils until it explodes. And that is when conflict gets really, really bad. It's like the volcano suddenly erupts, right? But imagine if instead of allowing conflict to erupt like an explosive volcano, what if you allowed that volcano to just blow off some steam, right? So, or imagine in a relationship, right? I know this is more of like a community-based thing, which makes it a little more complicated because we have more people involved here, but let's use the example of just a relationship because that's easier for me to use as an example. Think about a couple where imagine some couple where they're very, very afraid of conflict and they're very afraid of disagreeing with each other because they don't want to hurt each other's feelings and they don't want to create that kind of tension and friction in the relationship. So they just go along to get along and both kind of suppressing their own feelings and both just trying to make the other one happy all of the time. And then eventually this goes on until the resentments are simmering and the unpleasantness is simmering and all of the compromises are creating a bunch of like nobody's ever exactly happy. And then one day there's a huge explosion and the couple has this big fight, right? Well, that's one way of doing it. The alternative way of doing it is is actually speaking your truth in the relationship as soon as there is a truth to be expressed. So, hey, do you want to go to, you want to go to Red Lobster for dinner? Instead of somebody saying, oh yeah, that sounds great. Even if they don't want to, they say, no, I don't want to go to Red Lobster for dinner. Let's go somewhere else. It's better to get that little disagreement out of the way when it's just a little disagreement, even if then there needs to be a 10-minute argument about where to eat for dinner. Better to get that out of the way right now, because then it's a tiny little argument. It's a tiny little disagreement. And then you can practice getting comfortable with the tiny little discomfort of the tiny little disagreement. And then, so every time that comes up, you have to speak your truth. Every time you disagree with something, disagree with it. Speak it up right away. Make your disagreement known. Say, no, I don't want to do that. And that doesn't mean that you have to get your way every single time. Sometimes after saying, nah, I'm not really into that, I don't really want to go there for dinner, or I don't really like that, I don't want to do that. Well, after a discussion, you might come to some kind of a compromise or some type of okay, you get your way today and I'll get my way tomorrow, some type of agreement like that. But after you've discussed it, well, then you're probably okay with that, right? Because it's not like you need to get your way all the time, but you at least want to know that you can discuss it a little bit, right? So it's in that way, that couple that kind of gets the little disagreements and the little arguments and the little conflicts out of the way, kind of maybe even on a daily basis, they don't have those big explosive, volcano eruptions all of the time. So same thing with, apply that to the group, apply that to the collective. Especially so for the Anunnaki, I feel like because there is this kind of oppressive narrative, it's something funny, right? There's something funny that happens, I think, in terms of groupthink, that when there is one group or one person that has been labeled as the bad guy or the bad actor, it can be seen as very dangerous to disagree with that. Have you noticed that? If someone says that person or that group is very, very bad, it's almost dangerous to defend that person, or dangerous to say, oh, well, maybe there's more to the story, or maybe there's an alternative view, or maybe let's just think about this some more, or, it can be dangerous to stand up and say, maybe there's more to the story, right? It can, and I don't know, there's a feeling here of maybe for someone, maybe you even struggle to disagree with someone when someone says something bad about you. Like if you're ever falsely accused, have you ever just accepted that instead of defending yourself? I don't know, but that sounds a little weird, but I guess I can imagine a situation where that might come up with someone. You always have a right to defend yourself, right? You always have a right to defend yourself. So shaking yourself awake out of this kind of repressive sleep, shaking yourself up out of passivity is shaking yourself up out of this sleep. And this is really, and it's by just speaking your heart, right? And you don't need to be 100% sure about anything in order to speak your heart. When you speak your heart, maybe that's even part of this. Maybe you feel like you need to 100% know what you're trying to say. Maybe you feel like you need to 100% know what you're trying to communicate or what is true. That's not the case at all. Just start talking and talk it through and say, I'm not sure about this. I have confusion about this. I would like to talk about this. I would like to think about this some more. I would like this to be open for discussion, right? I would like to explore something, right? You don't need to take a particular view in order to express your truth. You don't even need to know what you're trying to say. You can just say, I'm a little bit confused. I would like to talk this out, right? that if that's your truth, then say that, right? Then say that. And this is interesting. So I feel like we have all these different levels going on, right? We have this kind of Anunnaki theme going on, and then we have these personal themes going on that are personal and individual to each of us. And then I feel like there's a greater level here going on for I would definitely say starseeds, but also just a greater level of awakening. So, this is a very timeless video. This is for you whenever you see this. But I'm recording this in October 2024. We're in Scorpio season. And there has been, how much do I want to get into this? I would say, in terms of starseed awakening, the starseeds of Earth wake up in these waves, right? There's always somebody waking up like every day, but like there's these big waves where like groups of people will kind of wake up more or less together. And there was kind of a big wave of awakening a handful of years ago. And it was this big kind of explosion of starseed energy. And then I would say over the last couple of years, we've been in a more grounded process, right? Grounding. And that has been so important. And because we've been learning how to thrive, right? We've been sorting things out with our bodies and with our finances and with our relationships. We've been sorting out some of the human life stuff, the grounded life earth stuff. This is very important. It goes in these waves where we go off into the spiritual and then we come, we go off into the, I hate that, right? I hate it when I always say it because it's the easiest way to talk. We say spiritual versus physical, as if the physical is not spiritual, right? And I never mean that. I 100% feel that our human lives and earth and matter in the material world is equally as spiritual as anything cosmic or invisible or, out there. It's all spiritual. It is all one unified spiritual world. So I guess to say, we have these phases where we go non-physical, and then we have these phases where we go more physical. And so that's been it. I feel like we're almost coming around full circle here, where there was a big non-physical explosion of and that included many things. It did include Starseed awakening, and then we've been cycling back down into grounding, physical, and now we're at this cusp of kind of a new phase of tuning back into the invisible energies, the cosmic energies, and that's going to include kind of new batches of starseeds waking up, different people having different mystical experiences, different spiritual awakenings for different people, and also for you, all of you as different individuals, a kind of revisiting of your spirituality, almost like a reawakening, where it's going to be kind of coming back around, and it will be coming back around in a new way because you are or have recently completed a cycle of grounding that might have lasted you a couple of years or more. So it'll be interesting to see what plays out in the next few years, because it feels like it's about time for a new round of higher dimensional energy to flood down into the earth. And okay, let me just get one of these cards to finish, see what comes up. And what's funny here is I'm talking about I'd mentioned something about the Annunaki nature. You may have noticed that this video did not really get to go into what is the Anunnaki nature. What is the Anunnaki identity? That is something I would definitely like to explore, but I think this video is already 50 minutes, so that'll have to wait some future video. But that's also, I feel, something to do with what's probably going on with you personally. Perhaps you might be sitting there going, what is my purpose? What is my truth? What truth do I have to be told? Right? What truth do I want to share? You might be wondering, what is my true nature? What is my true identity? What is my purpose? Thoughts like that. And so the feeling is you might not have those answers today. You might not have those answers today, right? And that's okay. You don't need to have those answers today. Trust me, the answers will become more clear to you. You will create those answers. You will construct those narratives. You will define your purpose. You will get more of a cultivated sense of your own identity moving forward. And so what I'm feeling here is you're going to be having an awakening of identity, but that might not be what you expected. Okay, that might not be what you expected. Even what does it even mean? What does identity even mean? Right? What does identity even mean? And how you identify yourself and how you see yourself, you're just at the cusp here of a new way of even understanding what it means to have an identity. And so I know this video is it's just kind of thrown up a bunch of ideas, and a lot of stuff is up in the air and nothing is really concluded. That's okay, because that is also part of this wave of energy where a bunch of stuff is being thrown up in the air, and it's starting off this new wave, this new trajectory, these new questions, this new process of discovery, this new journey. And so the open-ended questions that you ask now are going to be setting you up for the next 2 or 3 years of exploration. So do not expect yourself to have firm or concrete answers at this moment. It's more important to just have a curiosity and open-ended questions, because you're going to be moving through those moving forward. And let me just leave you with this final theme, this final thought. Freedom. Freedom. Okay. Freedom. I am just going to leave you guys there. We will definitely revisit this Annunaki identity in some future video. I have no idea how long it will take me to get to that one. But until next time, sending you so much love and light. I'll talk to you later. Bye.